Good afternoon, everybody. Hope lunch was a nice break from the morning. Just wanted to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that we meet on the land of the Wurundjeri Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation. On behalf of GWU, we want to pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. We also wish to acknowledge and pay respect to any First Nations people that are joining us today. In addition, I also want to acknowledge that First Nations people have played an important role and continue to play an important role within the Australian labour movement. Aboriginal land and sovereignty was never ceded. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. So good afternoon. My name is Morgan Little. Welcome to What Unionism Adds to Your Workplace. I thought I would start by introducing the other GWU members in the room. First off, we have David Haidon beside me. We have Tom Rowie joining us from Professional Australia. I practiced and I got the name right. Yes. Mays is here as well, and I know there are some others. If anybody is comfortable, please feel free to pop your hand up.
Yep. Mitch Hawthorne from GWU Sydney.
Awesome, thanks Mitch.
GWU, yeah.
Yeah, GWU. Yeah. Awesome, thanks Richard. Alright, so...
and Tom. Sorry.
And Tom.
Tom from GWU in Canberra.
Thank you, Tom. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we go too much further. First off, this isn't so much a talk as it is a workshop and a discussion. So at any point during the session, feel free to interrupt with any questions. If you want more information or to clarify something, that's the vibe we're going for this afternoon. And do you want to speak about the house rules?
Yeah, so we have a couple of house rules. One of the concepts that we're going to put forward is called Chatham House Rules. So people here may want to discuss their individual employment situation, and they'll either to use it as an example, to phrase a question, all that sort of stuff. So what we want to ask people is that that if you're tweeting about this, or if you're from the media, that you don't identify anyone. And so you're allowed to talk about what's being talked about, but we just ask that if you're on Twitter or you're part of the media, that you don't identify anyone without their permission. Do you understand that bit, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if there are, the other thing is that while this talk is focused on workers' experiences, if you are a boss, you are more than welcome to be here. This is a safe space for bosses, but the best thing you can do if you are an employer in this space is to listen to the experience of the workers, because this is focused on worker experience and it's a place to sort of learn and grow together. Yeah, should we dive into it?
Yeah.
All right. So this afternoon we're going to talk about a couple of things.
Yeah. So first off, just do a very quick intro history of unions and unions in Australia. And then move into more what unions do, and then we'll then place that in the context of games workers, and then that will sort of hopefully turn into a big discussion about the industry and about what we can do to make it better. So first off, I press the button and nothing happens.
Uh-oh. Off to a great start. Stand by, folks. It's literally not working. Have you got touch?
Yeah,
right.
There we go. Does anyone know what this is?
Is that the Eureka Stockade?
It is the Eureka Stockade. So the Eureka Stockade, a lot of people consider is one of the first union meetings of people in Australia. For those who don't know, in the 1850s, the government tried to enforce work permits on the people in the goldfields, and 12,000 workers on the goldfields stood together and raised the Eureka flag and pledged their allegiance to that, and to start to do things for themselves and for the workers and all that sort of stuff. So that's sort of the beginnings of the union movement here in Australia. Sort of fast forwarding a little bit to, obviously a lot of things that happened over the years with unions, but sort of fast forwarding to what's happening now. So here, so these are two of the unions that sort of sit in the games workers sort of space that are active right now. So as you can see, there's the Media, Entertainment, Arts Alliance. So that's the union that I work for. we're the union that represents like journalists and actors and theatre workers, film and TV, and under that sort of arts and entertainment umbrella, games workers as well. And this is a picture of our members at Home and Away, who they're the crew who make Home and Away, and they were facing down a 0% pay rise, and they took action, and they actually went on strike, or threatened to go on strike, and then Channel 7 decided that they would actually give them a pay rise and keep their conditions in place. And then on the other half is Professionals Australia. Tom, do you want to just quickly run down Professionals Australia and then what this picture is?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Tom Rowley from Professionals Australia. We're a union for a bunch of professions, but in this case it's more the engineering, IT, tech kind of stuff. And so obviously that crosses over into some game development. This is here in Melbourne, these are translators and interpreters, which is another profession we cover. Quite different sort of work, but yeah, they have a big back pay case because they've said that the government has been underpaying them for quite some time, and they were protesting outside the court. And this is one of several ongoing actions where they protest outside government offices and courts and try and get media support to support their case. Yeah, so that's them.
Right, so this is sort of examples of unions sort of active around Australia. Obviously, there's a lot more unions. There's unions for every industry. But then I wanted to land this sort of better in the sort of game workers context. I just want to, we've got some pictures of games worker union activity like around the world. So obviously we've got the International Workers of Great Britain have become the umbrella union for games workers in the UK. And there's a photo of them celebrating forming their union over there. The picture, the bottom picture of it, far from me, is games workers in Korea who, at Nexon, who went on strike. 600 of them went on strike about paying conditions, and that's them doing a sit-out. And then the other two photos are from the recent walkout at Riot Games around the culture of bullying and sexual harassment that was rife, that is rife in that organisation. So this is sort of like examples of like what unions do and what they are, and then I'm just going to go into a bit more detail around that sort of stuff. So, like, what do unions do? So, obviously, it's pretty clear. Just read out the slide, but all these different things are like what unions. You think you just that they're going on strike or they're about health and safety. No, they're about a lot of different things, and I'm just going to quickly touch base on those if I can get it to. So obviously unions protect security at work with expert advice and support. So Tom and I are like what are called organisers in unions. We provide advice to workers in our different sort of patches of our union, and then like on top of that we're supported by groups of people who are called industrial officers, who are like our sort of legal arm, and they understand like workplace law and all that sort of stuff. And then we also, we support people when they're like get into trouble at work, when they're like negotiating contracts and all that sort of stuff. Now, yes. So, and then like down to like focus on that, like the main thing obviously that unions like focus on are better wages and conditions. Union members in history have better wages and conditions than non-union members. They do this in Australia through a process called collective bargaining that is about basically sitting down and negotiating with employers about like what the rules and conditions of their particular workplace are. This can either be done at what's called there's sort of 3 tiers of employment in Australia. The NES is like the National Employment Standards. They're the basic rules. Then there's what's called awards, which are sort of industry rules, and then there are individual workplaces which are called enterprise bargaining agreements, and they're sort of the 3 layers in which workers bargain around their rights. One of the things that that is missing in the game workers world is that there isn't a single award that covers all the work that you do, and that's obviously we'll talk about this more. But one of the things that we would like to work with games workers to organise, to have a set of employment rules, like the construction industry, like nurses, like electricians, that sort of define and work with how you do your work. Obviously, the bigger a union is, the more power it has. It's a numbers game. A lot of agreements need to be voted up. You need 50% plus one to vote yes for an agreement. Sometimes it is a pure numbers game. So the more people who are involved, the more people who are active, the more people who are joining their unions, means that all workers in that industry get a better deal. And then obviously the thing that there's been a bunch of studies commissioned by various by the Australian Council of Trade Unions and by other organisations that, on average, work sites that are unionised get at least $100 more a week in their paychecks because they've been organising around this sort of stuff. And usually, while I talked about awards and how there's sort of the base level for an industry, union members who negotiate enterprise bargaining agreements are generally better off. They have better sick leave, they have better redundancy clauses, they have better conditions generally, and usually very focused in on their particular workplace. The other thing about having like a collective group of people together is it creates buying and lobbying power. So our members at MIA, and I'm sure members at Professionals Australia, we lobby on behalf of our members for things that they care about. So, obviously, I've done this a bit in the context of MIA, but we lobby government for more Arts Council funding for our theatre members and our actors in film and TV. We bargain around wanting Australian content laws, about press freedom for our journalist members, and then more broadly on sort of progressive issues, we campaign around marriage equality and climate change. And basically, because the union is its members, we actively campaign on the issues that our members want us to campaign, and these are the things that they want us to campaign on. Another thing is that the unions, we're 15,000 strong, we're able to broker insurance that is specific to the members in our industry, along with other things like help on home loans and car hire and all the different things that you could be using both in your work life and in your general life as well, by the sheer fact of the size of our organisation and being able to do that sort of thing. And then lastly, and probably most importantly, what unions do is they secure the future of the industry for the next generation of workers. Like joining, at least the Australian union movement is like, if you take it all collectively, it is the largest member-based organisation in the country. And you're not just standing alongside your fellow workers within your industry, you're standing alongside the fellow workers in the whole union and then the whole union movement in general. And a perfect example of that is the fact that both me from MIA and Tom here from Professionals Australia are here standing side by side to support games workers and their journey of unionisation. Industry is under threat. Like we hear, there's closures happening all the time, there's redundancies, there's rife bullying, sexual harassment, there's low paying conditions. This is a new industry and an industry that's looking towards the future, and we want to make sure that there is a future, that it is sustainable, that we stop getting people burning out and all that sort of stuff. So, and we do that across all of our industries that we work in. So now, some of you may have seen this. We released this yesterday, I think, or the day before. So we've been doing a games developer survey here in Australia, and these are just some of the statistics. So, to sort of back up what we're saying, despite there being reasonably good labour laws in regards to how much you should be paid, we've discovered that there's still sort of almost 20% of salaried employed workers are still being underpaid under the national minimums. That 44% of people have long-term concerns about the industry, about what the future holds and all that sort of stuff. So now I guess we're sort of going to move into more of a discussion and sort of get thoughts, answer questions, and see where we can take unionisation in the games industry together. So I have some ideas about this. Obviously, you who work in the industry will have ideas about this. I'll open the floor. Like, questions, comments?
Yeah, please take a photo of this one. Feel free to jump on the website as well and join the Discord, which is accessed via the website. Yeah, questions from the floor.
I'll start, Morgan.
Yep.
So obviously we used to work together.
Yep.
But I always was a bit resistant to joining the Game Workers Union because as we're a tiny indie studio, and honestly there's like 3 of us, why should I care about a lot of this stuff when I'm so unaffected by it being so insulated, siloed?
Sorry.
No, you speak to that one. I think
So,
that's a
like
good
one of the
one.
answers to this is around that kind of concept of like collectively like lobbying around the industry. Producers and, you know, much like our friends Nintendo and all those sorts of places hold a lot of power over indie games. So this is not just about like individual workers' conditions. This is also making sure that like everyone has proper access. That developers like Nintendo, like Microsoft, like Sony are treating workers correctly, both through the how they write contracts, how they like. Sorry, I'm getting a bit mixed up.
The way they treat third parties that interact with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do that a lot through dealing with producers in the film industry. Obviously, our members are like working. You know, they'll work directly for the lighting company that's supplying the lighting, or you know, that sort of thing, and they may not necessarily have that bargaining power with the producers who set the budgets. So, like, one of the things how we can help like indie studios and small studios and all that sort of thing is by collecting ourselves together to be able to lobby those companies on behalf of everyone to make sure that they are treating everyone well and that they are giving people a fair share of what their profit and their labour and all that sort of thing.
Thank you. Yeah, cool. Hello, yes, hi.
G'day. I think a lot of people in the games industry on the smaller end, students and all that, are hesitant to join unions due to certain cultural stigmatisms, as well as not wanting to rock the boat. Have you thought about ways to kind of alleviate the fear of like, oh, if I join a union, I'm not going to get a job because no one's going to want to hire me?
So, like union, you have like one, you have rights under the Australian law of freedom of association. So you are allowed to be a member of a union. You can't be discriminated against by being a member of the union. Also, your relationship with the union is your relationship. It's about how you use it. So you can join the union because you think that you just want that backup. You want to know that you've got someone to have your back. But you actually just don't have to tell your boss that you're a member of the union, or you, like, effectively. And so being able to, like, participate in that way, yeah. And also, like, being part of, like, bigger unions like PA and, like, MIA, we have and will, like, take bosses to court when they try to unfairly punish our members for being union. And we've had a recent case with Penguin Random House where we've had to do that. So it's about having that collective strength to stand with you when you want to take that fight. But the thing with like a fledgling industry and a fledgling union is that being able to, like, everyone needs to stand together. Like we all, I think the reason that you all come here today is because you're interested in this sort of thing. And like this is the start of a union, like this room of people, this is the start of a union, like in a way. And like, so you have the backup of every single person in this room, plus the ongoing effect of everyone else outside of this. Like, so the more people who are involved, the more backup, the more strength the union has through its sheer numbers, allows you to sort of counteract that pushback from bosses around like your union activity sort of in the workplace.
Hello, hi.
Hi. So I come from a varied background, originally in media and journalism. Now I work in games, still doing communications work, but also sort of publishing, and production. So I'm in a weird space. I used to be a member of the but I wasn't too sure if it was still relevant to me anymore. So I guess this is something that happens in games quite a bit, where we can be across lots of different roles, and where what union we fit into silly to be in two unions at once, or which one would apply more?
Do you want to
I'm a member of 2 unions. I'm a member of MIA, obviously. That's where I'm from. I'm a theatre person. I actually used to work here at the convention centre. That's where I came from. But I'm also a member of the Union for Union Workers. That's kind of one of the reasons why like games workers have organised both here in Australia and around the world under the banner of like Games Workers Unite. And then, like in the UK, in that photo that I showed you, and now in Ireland, and what has existed in France and other places around the world, is that, and unions in general, like, we need to organise collectively in industry. And so we need to be able to include everyone in that industry. Like the sites that I do, like, one of the sites I look after is the Arts Centre. I represent everyone at the Arts Centre, no matter what they do. So while we're the theatre union, we represent everyone who works in the theatre industry, like allied and not. So yes, you should be a member of MIA, because we work with community managers, we work with marketing people, publishing, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, and if that's something we're getting from workers, is like that we should be accommodating you. Like you shouldn't feel that you can't fit somewhere. No, we should be making room for everyone. And that like broadens with the games workers, you know, like the focus and a lot of the energy has come from developers in this space. But, you know, we've been talking to esports, we've been talking to games journalists, we've been talking to other spaces about this. So, yeah, everyone's welcome in the union.
And I think on top of that, sorry, I'll get to you in a second, but on top of that, the more people that are a part of the union from that background, the more experience and resources the union has to draw upon. So yeah, more of us together is good. Hello, hi.
Yes. Hi. So kind of piggybacking off that question, something that I encounter when talking to people about like unionising and joining their union, not necessarily just with games, is that they very often say like, look at something like, you know, Professionals Australia or, you know, Media Entertainment Arts Alliance, and they're like, oh, it's a broad thing. We don't actually have like a game union, so they're not gonna support me as well or anything like that. And honestly, I have actually experienced that. My union like covers Catholic schools and also what I work for. So they very much focus on that side of things. Oh, and we'll get to you eventually. How do you go about like convincing, I guess, people to join anyway? Because of course it comes the thing of like there's not many game workers, so they don't have as much strength in the union. And then like we can only get that if we get more game workers, but game workers won't join because there's no game. It's a cycle. How would you recommend like helping break that cycle, I suppose?
Do you have an answer?
Yeah, well, Game Workers Unite it's been built from the ground up by people working in different parts of the games industry. So that is before MIA or Professionals Australia. We have sort of adjacent coverage. But yeah, like Game Workers Unite is very active outside of the existing formal unions, and we're both here to support that. But yeah, I think if you join Game Workers Unite and either MIA or Professionals Australia, you're not at a huge risk of being ignored. A lot of attention's being paid, and the people who are involved, who are directly in the industry, are doing a lot of amazing work, and they're the ones that run it.
Absolutely. I'm actually a member of Game Workers Unite.
Yeah.
I just get, again, a lot of pushback from people being like, but it's not a real union. And I'm having trouble breaking that barrier.
Well, it's not a real union. I think a real union is a group of workers who are collectively trying to achieve something, whether it's recognised by the law or not. But I think in the future, there's an aim to have it either as part of another union or its own entity. But that's not going to happen if people don't join.
Yeah.
It will wither and die if people don't support it. It's not going to magically happen.
And I will admit this journey is going to be hard. There's going to be a lot of pushback, but you know, like we've got example after example of where like Workers United have like pushed back. Like we had those examples at the beginning. Like you think that like we do the film and TV industry, it's not very big, yet they have an extremely loud voice both in their world of within, you know, with their relationship to producers and all that sort of stuff, and also within our union as well. Like the union structure, like leadership and all that. So at the moment, like our federal president is arts department worker from who works on big Hollywood films. So like, yeah, it's tough because we're at a chicken and an egg sort of spot. Like you can't have a union without workers, but there's no union, so the workers won't join it. Like, so we need to push through that, and I'm glad that you've all come to talk about pushing through that. And
how can bosses support unionism? My boss is actually pro-union and wanting to actively support things, but it's, you know, there's obviously some kind of conflict there to start with.
yeah.
Just by the nature of the thing, but how can studios support unionism?
Well, obviously, like allowing like their workers the space to talk about unions, like is a good first step. The other thing, like the really good example that I have around this is with the relationship that the MIA has with our sort of equivalent bosses unions. So, you know, on one day we are standing with bosses side by side arguing for better funding for the arts, and then on the other side we have big raging arguments with them about wages and conditions. So it's about like just allowing this space for each other, I think is the...
Is there anything more proactive? Like that's a very, okay,
Yeah,
cool, we're
yeah.
allowed to talk about union in the workplace, we already know that.
Yeah.
I a lot of different workplaces, some of the boss is really hostile, some
Yeah,
they're
I
quite
realise that varies.
quite friendly.
You've got some friendly ones,
yeah.
how can you utilise that most?
When new staff come on, you could invite somebody from the union to come and speak to them. I do that at, say, the rail, because it's so heavily unionised, we have that sort of relationship. So anyone new coming into the company gets that information about it. Give them paid time to meet with each other, to do it on-site or off-site if they want. But also, there is going to inherently be a tension. So even the best boss in some of these companies, they're not going to be in the room for a union discussion and things like that. And so giving people their own space to have that is probably the best thing you can do.
Space, okay. If you come up with any more proactive things, I'd love to hear.
You can give them the forms.
Yeah,
So-
and I realise it's a big, but you know what I mean, like you do have allies in spaces that have the clout that you're looking to get closer to your goal. How can you utilise that the best? Is something that I would be.
Yeah. Okay. Any further questions? Maze, hello.
So the main thing that I thought about when I thought about game workers and the main hole that I was trying to poke in was how they deal with freelancers. So I was wondering if you could talk a bit about your experience with freelancers who are, you know, their own boss a lot of the time, or sometimes they are hiring other people, but then sometimes they are working for people, and they're sort of in and out of this situation.
There's a number of sort of practical things that we've done with our members. I'd say the actors section is probably the clearest example. Like rates cards, like organising, like having, you know, the union be the body that talks to the equivalent employer's body to work out like what are the minimum rates in this industry, like what are the minimum conditions, like the union can also like help, again, the sort of idea about brokering like things that freelancers and contractors want, like I was talking more about insurance and all that sort of stuff. The other thing is potential sort of template agreements, like being able to make it easy for the freelancer to like know exactly what their rights are, and that they can be given like either they give their contract to the employer and it's a templated one that freelance workers have gotten together and talked about and like written with the union to like, and then everyone agrees to that. Is sort of the main thing. Like voiceover artists do it, obviously the actors do it. Theirs is quite formalised, they've been doing it for 100 years. So like there's definitely space for freelancers and contractors and being able to support them through their union and all sort of stuff.
Maybe a question that's more maybe a suggestion for Giselle there. we're a company that support unions. Here's their logo, we support the unions, you know. Like, I think being very vocal, because that's always the fear if you were to get employed at a place, do they support unions? Like, you know, do you know that before you actually go to a place? Like, is this place a place that will support if I want to?
Which is something that anyone is working towards, is like a certification.
Yeah, like, that's a great idea, but for a boss can't just go, I support unions, like you need somebody, as you say, to certify to say, yeah, the unions think you support us
So
too.
a lot of unions
Because
already,
otherwise everyone would be, yeah, I totally support you. Hand on heart.
a lot of unions already have that process in place, and game workers are figuring it out as well.
Yeah, like we could potentially do like, I know I'm bringing up the SDA, which is like shittiest of the shittiest, but like even just like for retailers, like I remember back as a kid, just like getting a job, they would have the application form for the union, like the SDA. Like we could potentially, that could be an option. Like, you know, you offer like, you know, if you're like an artist, join the MEAA, or like if you're a developer, you can join Professionals Australia. Even just that, it's just like from a worker's point of view, that becomes like, oh, okay, so they're cool.
And so if you put it at, say, a longer term, feel free to tell me to shut up. That's fine. You know, you look at your goal at the moment is to get GWU as a union. If you start now, say, join the MEAA and join this, is that going to make it harder in the longer term to get or do they all just swap, or do they end up paying 4 different union fees? Or I'm just looking at the longer plan.
Yeah.
I think it makes it easier because people are in the union, and whatever model happens in the future, we'll figure out that transition when we get to it. But we need people to be in the union now to build that. I think if you want something really concrete to have the best unionised, certified sort of workplaces, have an enterprise bargaining agreement, which is negotiated between you and the workforce, and then that's the fairest possible process to try and achieve a fair workplace. And then you can have a clause in there that says, you know, we encourage people to be in the union, we support it. So you can initiate that process as an employer.
Yeah, the enterprise bargaining agreement is a huge one that allow bosses to show their support, but it's not a territorial, like, everyone join GWU, or, you know, it's not.
No, but it's, you know, like I have an interest in
once.
getting a critical mass in game developers specifically rather than someone else. So, you know, it's just, you don't want to be discouraging that.
It's just, it seems like it's just like a kind of a technicality at the moment because GWU is not a formal recognised union. It's just the way to get around it.
No, it's just a pipeline.
The other thing, like if we get to a point and you know, like are you sort of like hinting at, do people join PA or do people join MEA? Is that what you're sort of talking about?
No,
like,
that's all right. I understand what you're saying here.
The unions are a critical mass. They all work together, so it like almost just doesn't matter which one you join.
I've been on one side of the enterprise bargaining table with 6 other unions, so they're all on the same side. Sometimes it can be a bit complicated, but that's just how it works. So if people join a union, it doesn't really matter which it is, that's far better than not being unionised. And if you're paralysed because you can't make that choice, just close your eyes and be quiet. Seriously, like, enjoy it.
And coming at it from the other direction, like one of the big things that the philosophy around like Games Workers Unite and the movement, like internationally, is around obviously unions like have made mistakes in the past about unionising new industry and all that sort of stuff, and the philosophy, well, definitely of MEA and Professionals Australia is like, you tell us what the best fit is. Like, we're willing to accommodate what the workers want. We're like, workers are the union. That's what we, you know, that's how it needs to happen.
Hi there.
So, I joined the union like a few months ago, and I recently got a new job where I don't think anyone else is really currently interested in joining the union. What are some tips on like, I guess, how to start a conversation? Or
How to radicalise your workplace.
But I mean, at my previous work, we had a lot of issues with like not being paid on time, not being paid the correct amount, and so we all got you know, a bit pissed off about that. And it was kind of obvious, like, well, if we were in a union, then
I think you've kind of hit on it already. Is like talking about the benefits of being in the union and being a part of a group that's there to support you if things do go sideways. And I feel like especially this industry has a like a well-documented history of things going sideways out of the blue. Yeah, so trying to talk to people about the union as being like a, I don't want to use the word safety net, but I
Yeah,
feel
no,
like
it
there's
is a safety
absolutely
net.
an element
Like, you know, not everyone, if every single member engaged with the union around everything, like our office would be crazy. But yeah, so a lot of people are just members because it's the right thing to do, or for that one thing where their problem, whether it's a small problem about for a casual worker not being paid a shift, right through to like sham contracting or all that sort of stuff. So
also too, like, you'll get pushback from some workers too, because some might not even be interested in the union, and you just have to accept that fact. Like, I don't necessarily work in games, I work in advertising. That industry itself is quite bootlegger, but yeah, like, you're just gonna have, like, if sometimes some people will just not be interested, and like, no matter how much you tell them of the benefits, they'll just switch off because they've got like some idea that like unions are all full of thugs or whatever. Like, sometimes you're just gonna have to like accept, okay, that person, despite, you just have to let go, do as best as you can. But yeah, just remember that not everyone's gonna jump on board.
Does NIA or PA do delegate training? Because that's something a bit more practical. But I work a bit for Unions ACT, which is the Laboratory Council of ACT, and they do lots of workshops like every couple of months to train up delegates on specifically how to have those conversations in the workplace to get people to join that. So I don't know if PA or NIA does it, but
we actually did union conversation training for this week for the members of Games Workers Unite. So yes.
If you haven't got anyone else through it.
Yeah.
It just seems like when we keep coming back to it, like, oh, once people get to a critical mass, so like the more members, the better. So it seems like that's would be a useful thing to
Yeah.
place focus on.
I mean, it's not just that also, it's like often I am the only one out of like, you know, some person, the games IDs person, has gotten a whole lot of contractors on, and because I am part of the union and I know a lot about my rights, I negotiate contracts for like 3 weeks until it's perfect. And then the boss is like, well, I guess you can't be the only one with a good contract. And then everyone else gets it. And I'm like, alright, so you should all pay me to yeah, it's often finding that one unionist in the workplace is actually making a lot of difference still. Yeah.
Hello.
What can you do if you hear of a workplace that you're hearing bad practices about, but people aren't unionised in that workplace? Is there anything you can do yourself, talking to unions that you might be part of yourself, or is it just a case of educating these people within that workplace about unions and how that can help them, and it's something they have to do themselves? Or
I think it's good to educate those people about the benefits of the union, because if that leads to them joining the union, then they can take that proactive step in terms of turning things around. In terms of what a union can do in that scenario, if they're not members of the union, do you know what the go is there, David?
Well, we're a member-based organisations. Like, if people aren't talking to us about what's going on, then it's hard for us to do anything. It's also hard for us to action anything if we don't have members. So, when we're sort of breaking into new sites, breaking into new areas, we have lots of conversations like the conversation we're having here about all that sort of thing. And I talk to non-members all the time about like what they can do and how the union will help them. So it's just, and their colleagues who are union members talk to them about that. So again, it's just about a conversation. Like Games Workers Unite are working quite hard to create like documents that makes it really easy. Like obviously we've got the pamphlet that everyone's welcome to a copy. And there's a few facts on there around like wages and conditions, and we want to develop more of that specific to each subsection of the union of the games industry, so we can start yeah, but that's the sort of thing, like, you know, as the union grows, we find out, like, what resources do we need to keep growing the union? You know, is it training? Is it, like, award analysis? Is it, you know, what is it that we need to do to keep the momentum going and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, no, that all makes sense. It's just like, in situations like that, and obviously that makes sense, you know, they have to be members for really to be able to get proper advice and be able to collectively bargain, but in some situations where it is a really hostile work environment, they might be even more fearful of going to unions in that situation, so I was just wondering if there's anything outside of that that they can do, but it's, like you said, it's a hard road, it's just going to take time, and it's just hard conversations that we have to have over time.
Like, workers in Australia can access, like, the Fair Work Commission, the Fair Work Ombudsman, and that sort of thing. Like, you can whistleblow into those sorts of organisations. They are grossly underfunded, so some of them have trouble dealing with the high volume. But if you've read anything about like the hospitality industry and wage theft and all that sort of stuff, like the Hospo Voice and the union involved, and the Fair Work Ombudsman have been targeting, and it's building momentum around in that industry around that sort of thing. And people hear about it. Like, people are going to talk about it. Like, hopefully people are going to be talking about this. There's probably tons of people already talking about it on Twitter. I can see your phones. So yeah, that you know, it's just about keeping the conversation, keeping the door open at the union, like not turning people away, like making sure that even if they're not a member, they can at least still have a conversation and find out like where the starting point might be. I know it really sucks to work in like a really terrible conditions and you don't know what to do. It's a terrible feeling. So like, and it's scary to speak up, but it's about like making sure that we're continually to empower each other to speak up, and just making sure that space is there.
Hi there.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that
with units. So
one.
Sorry.
Yeah. So one of the things that would benefit me, and I know a lot of devs over in WA in particular, where like we haven't got that pre-established industry, and there's a lot of people that are just incredibly interested in unionisation, but you're basically building from the ground up, right? And so like at the moment I've got a team together and we're trying to essentially write our own contract agreement between each other that like we agree to from the ground up, with like unionisation in mind, like what's fair and equitable for all of us. But the big issue that we have is like, you know, we have a very limited amount of funding. It's not like we can go to a lawyer, and even if we do, most lawyers want to not make it fair and equitable. They want it to be all to the benefit of a business, and it's like the biggest headache in the world. Yeah, that's we were looking at like a joint venture structure, right? Like, so we're all still contractors. We all basically have equal rights. The joint venture basically establishes like we all are equal in that respect. But even then, going to a lawyer and saying to them, we want this kind of thing, the two lawyers that I've spoken to have basically been like, well, I don't want to represent the entire joint venture. I want to represent you so that I can act in your best interests. It's like, that's not what I want. So having like a resource like that where we can access like as really small indies or like startup indies to have help, you know, establishing those contracts for like co-ops and sort of thing would be so incredibly useful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have some people involved who are good at contract kind of review, and that is something that as a collective we are already starting to do. So you can join GWU and we can begin that process as well.
And like, it's contract analysis and negotiation is like the bread and butter of our industrial team. Like, they're doing it all the time, and it wouldn't take much to educate them on like getting them to think about it in that sort of co-op sense as well.
Yeah.
And then the work that like Maze has been doing around talking about it and like leading by example as well, you know, can then be amplified by the union.
Hi there, you're next.
Yeah, you touched upon before, like going to Fair Work. So I was wondering if you could expand upon about how a union could help you go to Fair Work, and what's the difference between a union and Fair Work, and what kind of things you look at.
Okay, so obviously the Fair Work Commission is the sort of arbitrator of industrial relations law here in Australia. You can take a lot of workplace relations stuff to Fair Work Commission. You can take it to as an individual. Also, you know, you can take it together with your union. We've done everything from where an employer is trying to terminate an agreement, where we've taken with our members to do that, all the way down to like arbitrating over unfair warnings and all that sort of thing. It's also a no-cost jurisdiction, so the idea is that that you don't actually pay to participate in that court. But obviously, like, it's a convoluted space, and navigating it as an individual is very hard, and that's why people have unionised, because they want. Sorry, I'm just having trouble with someone perfectly lined up with you to navigate that space. Yeah. And yeah. So did that answer the question, or is there?
Thanks.
Thank you.
This the question from online is
yeah.
how does MIA or PA interact with international unions, because our industry is so remote, there's a lot of remote workers and stuff.
We all have quick ones, like I know equity exists in New Zealand for like actors.
It's actually also MIA. Yeah. MIA is an international union. We also cover actors in New Zealand. Yeah. Obviously there's unions all around the world. I touched on one for the games workers in the UK, was it IWGB? Yeah. We've also been working with IATSE, which is the American and Canadian equivalent of MIA in the sort of visual effects sort of space. And obviously Games Workers Unite itself is, Games Workers Unite Australia is effectively like a sub-part of Games Workers International, and a number of our members are also part of Games Workers International and having those conversations like across the world. The unions are also like affiliates of the I can't remember what the exact acronym, but it's basically the International Federation of Unions in Brussels. In fact, an Australian is the current secretary from one of the teachers' unions. And yeah, so we interact with unions on like an international, a nation by nation level, and through international bodies at the same time.
Another one is a feeder, which is Union Aid Abroad, so they build union in like developing countries where they have really terrible conditions, so that's a pretty good way of doing international aid compared to what our government does, which is like setting up detention centres.
What is that one called?
A feeder.
I don't know what it stands for.
Like with TH?
APHEDA.
Yeah, I'm a member of a feeder.
Yes.
But yeah, sorry. Like for example, they yeah, cool. They work with workers in like developing countries, like dealing with occupational health and safety issues, like around asbestos. They're helping form unions in places where the governments are anti-union, and in the Asia-Pacific region.
Can we get a buzzer?
Sorry?
A buzzer, the Game Workers Unite buzzer. Are you giving
yes. Coming in the CSBN.
Forms as well.
Yeah. We also have a sign-up sheet going around, so you can join our mailing list.
And participate in the Discord if you like to participate in Discords.
Yes.
That's sort of, sorry, just to come to Tom's question just a sec. So you put your arm down, I know you're next. One other thing, you know, about the space that we live and work in now is very digital, and there's a lot going on in the digital space, like that is a boon for organising. Like it allows like workers all over the country to talk to each other and support each other, you know, through the internet and all that sort of stuff. So it's, you know, it's not just about a group of workers coming into a room and doing stuff. It's about, you know, we can also organise online, like organise through Facebook groups, through Discords, Slacks, all that sort of stuff. So it's, you don't, this thing, a union isn't a group of people in a room like voting, it's also like online and all that sort of stuff. And it's one of the big sort of strength and challenges of the 21st century in union organising.
We typically have like a national union Discord chat like once a month.
Yeah.
And then different branches will have like face-to-face kind of meetings as well. Like Sydney has one typically once a month at Professionals Australia. I'm not too sure what Melbourne or the other branches do. But
So that's probably a perfect way to segue into just wrapping everything up, because I think we're getting the wrap up symbol. Yeah. Like how do you participate next? So yeah, obviously the sign up sheet is going around. We'll then send everyone an invite to the Discord, and so you can participate in that way. And as Mitch has mentioned, Sydney have a face-to-face meetup once a month. Melbourne have a face-to-face meetup once a month. And we're starting, at those, members who are in the other cities around Australia. We're happy to support you in having your own Games Workers, Game Worker Unite Australia meetings. And yeah, so I guess that concludes our talk and discussion. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.